There are moments in history when silence carries more weight than proclamation, moments when what is left unspoken resonates deeper than what is loudly declared. Now, as the world turns its gaze toward Rome and the anticipation of the January Consistory grows, such a silence has settled over the Vatican, heavy with meaning and pregnant with expectation. Whispers have begun to drift from the corridors of power, faint at first, almost imperceptible, like distant echoes. Yet they are growing, swelling into a tide that cannot be ignored, revealing a truth that is unsettling, profound, and for many, disorienting. The heart of the matter lies in a choice that, on the surface, may appear ordinary but, in its implications, is monumental. Victor Manuel Fernández remains at the helm of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith. In a pontificate where every gesture is analyzed, every appointment dissected, and every phrase weighed for nuance, this decision is far from incidental. It is deliberate, a signal sent in quiet but unmistakable tones. It is not a rupture, nor a dramatic declaration. It is a continuation, consolidation of the past, and a reaffirmation of a path already drawn. There is no sudden break, no sweeping gesture of doctrinal upheaval. Fernández's permanence is subtle, almost invisible, yet its significance is profound. The new Pope, Leo XIV, has chosen a path eloquent precisely because it is discreet, allowing the theological lines drawn over decades to continue shaping the Church's direction. While many had anticipated a consistory to signal a before and after, to mark a clear end to ambiguity and a fresh start to Catholic clarity, the Church instead demonstrates continuity. Fernández's ongoing leadership is not mere tradition, it is both theological and political, a symbolic statement, a deliberate act to consolidate the doctrinal course. This is not an abstract or neutral move. It comes at a time of mounting tension, when questions of faith, interpretation, and tradition quietly swirl with force beneath the surface of Catholic life. Central to this tension is the document Ma Fidelis, a text that has reverberated through theological circles like a tremor beneath the Vatican's polished floors. Its careful wording approaches the traditional titles of Mary, Mediatrix of all graces, Co-Redemptrix, with caution, almost suspicion. Once these titles were celebrated, defended, and pondered by popes, councils, theologians, and the faithful. Now, they are treated as potentially divisive or outdated, a subtle but significant shift that strikes at the heart of Catholic identity. Yet these titles are not mere words on parchment. They are living expressions of devotion, emotional and spiritual threads woven into the very fabric of Catholic life. They testify to the unique and irreplaceable role of Mary in salvation, maintaining her centrality without diminishing the redemptive work of Christ. To question them is not merely an academic exercise, it touches the emotional and devotional life of the faithful. Ma Fidelis, with its gentle hesitancy, has become a lightning rod, a mirror reflecting unease, a symbol of a wider anxiety about the direction of the Church. Monsignor Bernard Filet, a figure widely respected for his clarity and courage, has spoken plainly where many others remain cautious. He called the document pitiful, and even an insult to God. Such words, strong and uncompromising, echo the fears of millions of Catholics who worry that the Church's doctrinal watchtower, intended to protect the faithful from confusion, may now be yielding to cultural accommodation. Filet's concern extends beyond Mariology, it encompasses a broader, existential anxiety. He notes that the Church's influence in the world has waned, its voice muted, its ability to shape hearts and minds diminished. Vocations are declining, parishes emptying, and the rhythm of faith once deeply woven into daily life now stumbles under the weight of distraction and indifference. The warning of Cardinal Ratzinger, decades ago, resurfaces in these reflections, a church reduced to small, isolated communities in a world deaf to the message of Christ. That prophecy, once feared, now appears increasingly tangible. Filet asserts that the Ma Fidelis document did not arise from a desire for clarity, but from a wish to accommodate and reconcile. In his words, there is a Protestant spirit in the Church, a recognition that some decisions, however well-intentioned, risk diluting truths that have been faithfully handed down for centuries. A concern for dialogue with those who do not recognize Mary's universal motherhood has, in effect, introduced hesitation where certainty once prevailed. And yet, life in Rome continues with quiet steadiness. Fernández's tenure is likely to extend until 2028, the natural conclusion of his mandate, with no signals of imminent change. His presence ensures that the doctrinal course set over recent decades remains steady, offering reassurance for some, alarm for others. Critics fear that a ministry once dedicated to safeguarding doctrine could transform into a laboratory of adaptation, bending the truths of faith to the needs of the historical moment rather than upholding principles that transcend time. For traditional believers, this is more than a question of nuance, it is a fear of losing clarity, and perhaps certainty itself. Pope Leo XIV, with his gentle and affable demeanor, tempers perception. He engages with the world warmly and opens dialogue where confrontation might once have been expected. Yet beneath the congeniality lies doctrinal continuity, a church that is softer in style but not firmer in principle. The combination is subtle and potentially more insidious than overt turbulence. It is a drift that is harder to recognize, a change carried out in a gentle, almost invisible current rather than a storm. Amid these complexities, the spiritual reality grows more urgent. Vocations decline at rates unseen in decades. Parishes that once pulsed with life echo with silence. Sacraments are observed in half-empty spaces. Cultural currents, often indifferent or hostile to tradition, tug at the hearts of the faithful. Faith, for many, has become fragile, susceptible to doubt, distraction, and the pressures of a world increasingly distant from the sacred. Filet frames this as an existential dilemma. The Church faces a time when moral clarity is challenged and cultural forces conspire to dilute the essence of faith. In this context, Fernández's retention must be understood not as a personal choice, but as a structural decision. It signals that the pontificate does not aim merely to preserve tradition, but to guide a church in flux, to accompany, support, and perhaps accelerate doctrinal evolution. The metaphor of small islands of faith scattered amid a sea of secularism becomes a tangible reality, and the consolidation in Rome is a first step toward this new landscape. The implications for the faithful are profound. A church whose doctrine is fluid and adaptable challenges the very notion of certainty. It calls into question the foundations of belief that generations have relied upon, the anchors of theology and devotion that have guided Catholics through centuries of triumph and trial. Yet the decision is deliberate, subtle, and persuasive, a signal that continuity may prevail not through proclamation, but through quiet, almost invisible persistence. Across the world, Catholics sense this subtle tremor. The decision to retain Fernández carries weight far beyond Vatican walls. For decades, the Church has been more than a structure of governance, it has been a living presence, shaping prayer, devotion, and moral compass. Witnessing a perceived softening or fluidity in doctrine can feel like a disturbance to the spiritual compass, as though the very instrument that guides one's journey wobbles under unseen pressure. Faith is not merely a set of instructions, it is lifeblood, flowing through generations, shaping character, morality, and hope. When doctrine wavers, the flow slows, and the soul struggles. This is not fear born of abstraction, it is lived reality. Attendance at Mass declines. Families drift from ritual, distracted by modern pressures. Children encounter faith as a concept rather than a living experience. Yet, amid this turbulence, hope persists. Communities of faith, priests, religious, laity, continue to pray, to study, and to witness, preserving the essence of Catholic identity. The Church lives not only in decrees, doctrine, or hierarchy, but in hearts and actions. Its resilience manifests in rosaries whispered, Eucharistic devotion observed, acts of charity enacted, and faith quietly nurtured, often unseen. The document Ma Fidelis remains central in this narrative. Its cautious approach to Marian titles resonates deeply, signaling an uncertainty where certainty was once celebrated. Mediatrix, Co-Redemptrix. Titles that are expressions of love, devotion, and theological reflection, whose questioning sends ripples through the faith of countless believers. To many, the quiet re-evaluation of these truths is unsettling. It is as if the watchtower of doctrine, intended to protect against confusion, now risks bending to cultural accommodation. For those attuned to the heartbeat of the Church, this is the most alarming sign in decades. Pope Leo XIV's affability and dialogue-driven style presents a Church accessible and gentle in manner, yet continuity remains firm in substance. Style does not alter essence. Beneath warmth lies the same doctrinal assumptions and trajectories that have been quietly developing over years. For some, this makes the drift more difficult to detect, more insidious, because it comes not with confrontation but with subtle reshaping. Yet within this turbulence, resilience remains. Faithful communities persevere, embracing prayer, sacraments, and devotion as anchors amid shifting doctrinal currents. Even as doctrine appears adaptable, the Church's spiritual foundation, the sacraments, Eucharist, and life of prayer, remains steadfast. The faithful are called to a deeper engagement, to active witness, and to prayerful discernment. History has shown that periods of uncertainty can lead to profound understanding, renewed devotion, and greater appreciation of the mysteries of God. The stakes could not be higher. The consolidation of Fernández's role signals a Church willing to adapt, reinterpret, and accommodate in ways that may unsettle those who seek firm ground. A ministry meant to safeguard faith may instead guide it through subtle evolution. The faithful are challenged not only to discern and reflect but to anchor themselves in the spiritual truths and practices that have sustained Catholic identity across centuries. The question that emerges is urgent. What does it mean to be Catholic in a world where certainty is questioned, tradition is negotiable, and the pillars of faith are subject to reinterpretation? These are lived realities, shaping hearts, minds, and prayers. As the January Consistory approaches, the quiet decision in Rome reverberates globally. The ripples of doctrinal change extend far beyond Vatican walls, touching private spaces of devotion, prayer, and contemplation. Catholics across continents watch, pray, and reflect. They confront questions of identity, devotion, and faith. They navigate a world in which Church decisions are subtle yet powerful, shaping not only the institution but the lives of those who inhabit it spiritually and emotionally. The decision to retain Fernández is far more than an administrative choice. It is a signal, a message, and a call to remain vigilant, to pray, and to hold fast to the truths that anchor belief, even as currents of adaptation flow quietly beneath the surface. The narrative is clear. The Church is at a juncture of quiet but decisive significance. Tradition and continuity are being reinforced in ways that are subtle, strategic, and profound. Doctrine may appear flexible, style may seem gentle, the faithful may experience uncertainty. Yet, amid all this, hope, prayer, devotion, and witness remain unbroken. The call to the faithful is to engage, to anchor themselves in the enduring truths of the faith, to preserve the spiritual lifeblood of generations, and to witness, quietly but steadfastly, the presence of God in a Church navigating the delicate balance between tradition and adaptation. If this message touched your heart, comment Amen and stay with us. More Eucharistic stories, deeper reflections, and holy insights are on the way. May Christ in the Eucharist be your light, your rest, your truth. Amen.